You know that person, the one who's never once said, "I don't know." The one who speaks with total confidence about medicine, politics, nutrition, and car repair, despite having zero training in any of it. You've probably assumed they're arrogant. Maybe they are. But there's a very real chance something stranger is happening inside their head. Something that has almost nothing to do with ego and everything to do with a specific, measurable gap in how the human brain evaluates itself. In 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler robbed 2 banks in broad daylight, with no mask, no disguise, nothing covering his face at all. Security cameras filmed him clearly at both locations. Police arrested him within hours. When they showed him the footage, Wheeler was stunned, genuinely confused. He'd rubbed lemon juice on his face before the robberies, reasoning that since lemon juice is used as invisible ink, it would also make his face invisible to security cameras. He wasn't lying. He wasn't on drugs. He fully, sincerely believed it would work. Psychologist David Dunning read about Wheeler's case in the newspaper, and it stuck with him. Not because Wheeler was unusually stupid, because Wheeler was confident, astonishingly, unshakably confident, in a plan that any 5-year-old could have identified as insane. Consider what that actually means. Wheeler didn't just lack the knowledge to know his plan wouldn't work. He lacked the knowledge required to even recognize that his plan wouldn't work. That's a very different, much stranger kind of ignorance. In 1999, Dunning and his graduate student Dunning-Kruger published a study that turned this bizarre case into a formal psychological finding. They gave Cornell undergraduates tests in 3 areas: grammar, logical reasoning, and humor. Then they asked each participant to estimate how well they'd performed compared to everyone else in the room. The results were consistent and strange. Students who scored in the bottom 25%, genuinely, measurably the worst performers in the entire study, estimated on average that they'd outperformed 62% of their peers. Not a small miscalculation, a near total inversion of reality. The people who did worst believed with real confidence that they'd done better than most. Strange, isn't it? You'd expect people to have at least some rough sense of how they're doing. Dunning and Kruger's data said otherwise, and the explanation they proposed became one of the most cited findings in modern psychology. They called it a double curse. Being bad at something requires a specific set of skills to recognize you're bad at it. Grammar requires grammatical knowledge to evaluate grammar. Logic requires logical reasoning to evaluate logic. If you're missing the skill itself, you're also missing the exact tool you'd need to notice the gap. The incompetence and the blindness to that incompetence come from the very same missing piece. Meanwhile, the study found something almost as strange happening at the other end. The highest performers, the students who scored in the top quartile, actually underestimated themselves slightly. They assumed everyone else found the material just as easy as they did, so they didn't rate themselves as dramatically above average, even though they clearly were. Somehow, that's comforting. The most competent people in Dunning and Kruger's study weren't walking around dripping with confidence. They were quietly, incorrectly, assuming everyone else was just as capable as they were. But here's where the story gets more complicated, and where a lot of people who casually reference the Dunning-Kruger effect today are missing something important. In more recent years, researchers including Gilles-Guignac and Marcin Zająkowski have pushed back on parts of the original interpretation. Their analysis suggests that some of the original effect may be partly explained by a statistical phenomenon called regression toward the mean. Essentially, noisy self-estimates naturally cluster toward the middle of a scale, which can artificially create a pattern that looks like the bottom performers are wildly overconfident, even if the underlying psychology is a bit more subtle than the original graph suggested. This doesn't erase the original finding. MacArthur Wheeler's lemon juice was still very real. Bottom quartile students still, on average, wildly overestimated their performance in Dunning and Kruger's original data. But it does mean the popular version of this effect, the one usually deployed as an insult against someone you disagree with online, is often simpler and more cartoonish than the actual research supports. So what does that mean for you? The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't primarily a story about other people being confidently wrong in. It's a warning about a blind spot built into your own cognition, in whatever domain you happen to be least skilled in right now. You cannot fully audit your own incompetence, because the same missing expertise that makes you bad at something is the expertise you'd need to notice you're bad at it. Here's the part that actually matters. The people you've mentally filed under overconfident and clueless aren't a different category of human than you. They're operating with the exact same cognitive architecture you are, just applied to a domain where their skill happens to be lower and their blind spot happens to be larger. Somewhere in your own life, right now, in some subject you feel completely confident about, that same blind spot may already be active. Quietly, invisibly, exactly the way lemon juice once felt like a perfectly reasonable disguise to a man about to be arrested on camera. So the next time you catch yourself feeling completely certain about something you've never actually studied, pause for just a second. That confidence might be real expertise, or it might be lemon juice. If this video made you rethink someone you know, or maybe yourself, share it with the most confident person you know who's never once said, "I don't know." With someone who needs to hear that overconfidence isn't always arrogance. Sometimes it's just a blind spot none of us can see in ourselves. Like this video if it made you question a fact you were completely sure about. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. This channel exists to keep asking the questions nobody else bothers to. And drop a comment below. What's one thing you were completely confident about until you found out you were wrong? This channel exists because of people who stay till the end. So thank you, genuinely. See you in the next one.